I'm Kirby Anderson. Our guest now is Congressman Ron Paul, an individual that has served the 14th District in Texas for many years, has run for the presidency, enjoys a national reputation as a premier advocate of liberty and politics today, a graduate of Gettysburg College, Duke University School of Medicine. As a specialist in obstetrics and gynecology, has delivered more than 4,000 babies, and probably best known for standing up for the American taxpayer. Representative Paul, always a delight to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good to be with you today.
We have posted a number of your commentaries, some on the bailout surge, the new alchemy of the Federal Reserve. I guess we'll start with the issue of the bailout. Today, President-elect Barack Obama was speaking to the National Governors Association, Philadelphia. A little bit later, we're going to hear from some of the governors asking for money. One of your commentaries talks about the big three automakers. We're going to hear from some of them a little bit later as well. And yet, I guess all of us are concerned that this money is obviously going to have to either be printed by the Federal Reserve or borrowed. And we, well, number one, wonder how effective it's going to be, and number two, where indeed is the money going to come from, and what's the impact? What are your thoughts?
Those are pretty good questions. First, it's going to be all a negative. I don't think there'll be any real positives for doing exactly the wrong thing. And you're right about wondering where the money's coming from, because the federal government is technically totally insolvent. They cannot pay their bills. We just run up our deficits and our debt constantly, and it's built on still there is a trust in our government, our military power, our economy, and still a bit of a trust in our dollar. But I think what we're seeing now is a shift in that sentiment. People are less likely to loan to us. People are worried about the whole financial system. They can't tax us anymore. If they raise taxes now to pay some of these bills, it would really, really crash the economy. And yet there's not one single serious effort in Washington to cut any spending any place. I think all we're going to see now is as the Republicans leave office, they've emphasized bailing out big companies and banks and financial institutions. And I think it's going to shift. I think the money is going to go into the hands of people, credit card holders and student loans and mortgages that can't be paid. But the sentiment is very, very strong that the government has to do something, and they think the government should spend more money, and they don't have it. It's only going to compound our problems.
You know, one of the things I've noticed, Representative Paul, is the fact that most people don't even understand how big the numbers are. I noticed in one of your commentaries you said the total bailout commitments add up to $8 trillion, but someone kind of did a number on what even $4 trillion would look like. When adjusted for inflation, this would include the Marshall Plan, the Louisiana Purchase, the New Deal, the Race to the Moon, the Savings and Loan Bailout, the Korean War, the Iraq War, the Vietnam War, and NASA. That still doesn't get you up to about $4 trillion. Your estimate is it's twice that amount. I don't think most people realize that this is not monopoly money. This is going to have to come from somewhere.
And it changes constantly. But to clarify a little bit, the $8 trillion is the obligation that has not been spent yet.
So it could be loan guarantees and things.
It'll be guarantees.
Sure.
But really, the process is almost what we should be more annoyed about than the so-called dollars. The market will take care of the dollars. The dollars, if we print too many, the market's going to react badly and it will take care of it. But the process is so out of control. Last week, when Bernanke was asked, by that time we were concerned about $2 trillion that the Fed had created and loaned out to the banks, and he was asked who got this, and he said that would be inappropriate for him to. I mean, can you think of anything more arrogant and bold that a bank that is secret, that we have no right to audit or control, and here they can appropriate, in a sense, if you want to call it appropriate, at least have $2 trillion and authorize and then give it to somebody, and we have no control or understanding. We don't even know where it's going. I mean, I don't know how this thing is even going the way it is. I mean, an average person of common sense would say this is foolhardy. And yet we're living in dreamland to think that we can continue to do this. And I think the American people have begun to awaken. Remember the first bailout bill that came up? It came up on a Monday, and we voted it down. The people were outraged.
Right.
Then it was 4 or 5 days later, after the heavy lobbying done by unions and big businesses and twisted arms, they went back and they switched 57 votes of a lot of conservative Republicans, and they voted for the bailout. So the people are struggling to send the message to Washington, and yet I don't think we listen. Of course, this election was about change, so the guy who said change the most won the election. But then if you look at what he's proposing, there's no change at all. It's probably going to be more of what we've been doing. So it's a sad state of affairs, and I think the best we can do is prepare people for it and try to protect our families and do our best in trying to reform our government. And it's going to take a lot of reforming.
Let's talk about one possible reform, and that would be the Federal Reserve. We've done some programs in the past kind of preparing our listeners for you because you have been speaking about it for some time, but most people don't really know the history of the Federal Reserve. Now we've done some programs on it. Even our latest Outlook magazine gives you a history of it. But here is a group of bankers that many people think is actually a government entity. It's not. It's not federal, and it doesn't really have many reserves, but nevertheless it's called the Federal Reserve. And it just seems to me if we're going to actually have these bailout commitments over time, almost for certain, the Federal Reserve is going to have to print more money. Print more money, that causes inflation. Yeah. So isn't that part of the issue that needs to be reformed?
I think it's the biggest because whether you're a welfareist or you believe we have to police the world, they always need money. They can't tax us, and they're running out of borrowing power, so they have to create the money. The government, in the ordinary sense, doesn't do it. It's the Federal Reserve that works in cahoots with the special interests who get this money first. And I want to get rid of the Fed. It wasn't authorized, and I think it does nothing but harm. But if you didn't get rid of it, what you have to do, since it was created by law, and we can write some laws and put them under it if we have the desire to, what has to be removed is the power to create money out of thin air, and especially in the manner that they do it, where it's in secret and nobody knows how much and who are the beneficiaries. That has to end, or it's going to end up very badly. We're going to end up with a much, much worse economy, a destruction of the dollar, and under those conditions it become chaotic, and that's when people lose their freedoms. There's so many history lessons that we should have learned, whether it was Germany or Central America or South America or our own time at our revolutionary period. We destroyed a currency there, and we got through that. But that's why the founders said no printed money. All you have to do is have gold and silver. So we refuse to learn these lessons, thinking that there is such a thing as a free lunch, and you can get a free lunch living off other people for a while, but eventually it comes to an end.
Brings us back to one of the pieces we've posted there from Texas Straight Talk, the neo-alchemy of the Federal Reserve. You say just as alchemists of the past frequently poison themselves with lead or mercury trying to turn it into gold, today's bankers are poisoning the economy with accelerated fiat money creation. Ever since we went off the gold standard, Nixon took us off in 1971, we don't really have any fixed money supply, so that varies all over the place. And it does seem to me, Representative Paul, that we're going to eventually run out of money that we could tax or borrow. And that almost for sure tells the listeners that are actually trying to manage their portfolios that the Federal Reserve is just going to have to print the money. When it does, their dollar is going to be worth a lot less.
Right. So they may be able to tax, and there may be so-called money, but not in the real sense. They're going to what we all care about is wealth. If they have a lot of dollars, now the mechanism is set up to distribute dollars. In the Depression, they couldn't do it, but now students can get it, and mortgage holders can get it, and Medicare people, Social Security, everybody can get dollars, and they can tax to a degree, but there will be no wealth. So we can keep this going for a little while by saying, well, the retirees don't have enough money and their retirements have been wiped out. Well, we can keep sending them checks, but the big question is, will their checks buy anything? And what my prediction is that you cannot create money like we're doing now. It has to lose value. In spite of some deflationary pressures right now, with some prices coming down, they cannot defy the laws of economics. You just can't print money endlessly and think that it's going to maintain value.
That's right. Water can only run uphill for a short period of time. It's not going to work very well. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, some of you would love to, I think, express your opinions and ask questions of Representative Ron Paul. He'll stay with us for a little bit longer. Represents the 14th District in Texas. Of course, he was presidential candidate and has a lot of sound advice about the economy, and we have posted a couple of his columns up there today that you might want to read and print out. The neo-alchemy of the Federal Reserve, the bailout surge. We also have posted a few others that you might find interesting as well. One by DeRoy Murdoch, the bipolar bailout disorder, which was one that appeared in National Review. And of course, we have a couple having to do with the guest that we'll have in the second hour today, Representative Louis Gohmert, representing the 1st District. He's talked about